Hi guys, and welcome to the KBB Collective channel. Today we're going to be talking about the 4 reasons that your kitchen business is not scaling beyond that £1.5 million a year mark. Now, just to give you some context, if you don't know my background, I ran my family kitchen business, took it from one doing about £1.5 million a year in turnover to one doing over £7 million a year in turnover. And a lot of what we're going to talk about are things that I actually experienced and ultimately overcame to scale beyond that ceiling. So why is 1.5 million this magical, mythical ceiling, and it's really hard to sort of break through that level? And I speak to business owners all of the time in the kitchen industry that are hovering around this mark, 1.3, 1.4, and they're really, really struggling to break through this ceiling. And that is because it's very, very hard to get beyond that point, working as basically one person, running around like a headless chicken, doing absolutely everything themselves, seeing clients, doing site surveys, doing the quotes, managing the team, doing the finances. You can get to that level and you're going to have to put in 16, 18, 20-hour days to be able to get to that point without having a real solid structure, a proper team that is accountable, and all these other things we're going to talk about. But basically, if you scale beyond that 1.5 million a year, just you doing pretty much everything, the wheels are going to fall off. And another thing that people don't really talk about at this level is that you are faced with this really hard decision where you either take less money every year out of the business to pay yourself in order to start hiring 18 players and be able to really hire the right people in the team to be able to delegate the hard stuff that you struggle to let go of, or you do make that decision, you have to live the next 6 months, a year with earning far less money, taking basically what is a risk because you don't know how it's going to work out, just at the hope that this person that comes in is going to really save the business and drive it forward. But of course, if they don't work out, you might have burnt 6 months of money that could be in your pocket for what is the wrong person. So I understand why people struggle to get past this point. And today what we're going to talk about are 4 of the key reasons why people get stuck at this point and what you can do to break free from that level and get really beyond that £1.5 million a year mark. So the first reason that people can't break beyond this point, and we've already alluded to it, is that you are doing everything yourself. Now, most people that start a kitchen business, they do start as a one-man band and they do have to do everything themselves. And slowly but surely, they hire team members, not necessarily A players, but they hire people to do certain things, okay? But there is always, because you're a small business, there is always going to be that element of, well, I can do it better, okay? And in most cases, that is true because you're not probably paying top market prices for the people in your organization, because why would you when you first start out? So there's always going to be this element of, well, I can do it better. But the best businesses that I see are the ones that A, are able to delegate and accept that at the beginning, things are not going to be done 100% as good as you would be able to do it, but that is what's going to allow you to get beyond this point in the company. Okay, so you have to let go a bit, and you have to understand that at the beginning, it's not going to be done as well as you potentially would have done it. Okay, or you're thinking all the time, it's just quicker for me to do it myself. That is not how you're going to get beyond this point. You do need to hire the right people. You need to hire 18 players, and you need to be able to delegate and empower them and make them accountable and responsible for a very narrow set of metrics within the business, okay? So let's say that you are currently doing all of the sales in the business. Currently, you're seeing every client, and that is how most businesses start. You've got a reputation. People are coming to you because they know you, and you're getting all of the referrals. So Mrs. Smith said, go and see John over there. He's a great guy. They come in and they expect to see John. This is going to be maybe one of the first things that you want to delegate. That salesperson needs to have a very, very clear understanding that there is basically one number that you care about, other than them being a dickhead. There's one thing that you care about, and that one thing is the revenue that they're bringing into the business, okay? So their North Star metric is going to be the, of course, annual sales that they bring into the business, the annual revenue. We break it down into weekly chunks, but ultimately they need to have a goal, they need to have a target, and that target needs to be reviewed at regular intervals so that they know that they can't, mail it in, they can't sandbag it. They have to come and they have to bring their best game to the table because you are going to be on their case if they don't. Now, of course, there are other factors involved. You don't want to hire someone that's a killer salesperson but is actually just not a nice person and culturally is impacting the rest of the team. That's a whole nother story. That's about leadership and management and direction. But ultimately, you are going to want to lead this person and give them very clear metrics to follow. These are the sales that I expect from you, and monitor it closely. The second reason that people don't get beyond this £1.5 million ceiling, and this is the one I see all the time, is that they don't have a proper marketing system that is built almost like an engine that just keeps ticking along in the background, bringing in qualified leads. So if you've got to that £1.5 million mark and you're stuck, sometimes it's because you are relying on word of mouth and referrals. Of course, you are completely not in control of those sources of leads. Yes, they are the best source of leads because they will convert far higher. It's warm, it's trusted sources, but ultimately you are not in control. So you cannot sit here and say, next year I'm going to do £3 million a year in turnover, because you don't know what's going to come in the door. Maybe none of those leads are going to come in the door, no referrals. And then, what do you do? So really you have to build a marketing engine that means that you are not reliant on these word of mouth and referrals coming in. So how do we do that? Well, we typically teach our businesses to leverage both organic social media. So they are producing content for Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, that is being published very, very regularly at an extremely regular cadence that is bringing in eyeballs, it's bringing in brand awareness, and we optimize the social profile so that when someone sees a video, the next step they take is to go and visit the profile, and we make sure it's very easy for them, signposted for this prospect, to then get in touch with you from the Instagram page or the TikTok page or whatever it is. Okay. The second layer to this is that we run paid advertising on Facebook, Instagram, sometimes on TikTok. You can do Google ads, but paid ads where it is much more methodical and linear, where I put X number of pounds in and I'm getting Y number of pounds out in terms of revenue generated by the business. So we taught one of our clients in the KBB Collective how to run Facebook ads, how to make the creatives for it, how to do it all from start to finish. And the first campaign that he set up, he generated off of £5,000 in ad spend over 5 months, so £1,000 a month. He generated £350,000 in kitchen sales. Okay, so this stuff does work. You do need to understand how to do it properly. Of course, you can go and pay an agency to go and do it for you, but I always tell people that they should really understand this stuff and understand it at a root level, so that if you do eventually hire an agency, and that's fine, especially as you get bigger, or you have someone in-house, you want to be able to understand the measuring stick by which you are judging things. And, you don't want them to be throwing all these acronyms out there that are sort of pulling the wool over your eyes. You need to understand this stuff at a base level to make sure that you can really judge performance and whether what they are doing is correct. Reason number 3 that people don't get beyond this point is that their unit economics and their gross margins typically are not very good. And I can't tell you how many kitchen business owners that I speak to that really do not still have a grasp on their gross margins, what gross margins even are, what goes into a gross margin, what you should be including in your cost of sales. And that's understandable, because most of you guys are, started off as kitchen designers or fitters or cabinet makers. You probably didn't start off as accountants. So I understand the hesitation there and why it's just easier to ignore it, leave it with the accountant. But the issue with that is you wait a whole year, typically, to get back a piece of paper that says this is the money that you made. And probably most of the time you're looking at that going, well, where's it all gone? I've been so busy, but there's no profit. I don't understand. And the biggest culprit there is to do with the gross margins. So with a kitchen business, you have a lot of fixed costs. So your salaries, your rent, your rates, your vehicles, there's a lot of fixed costs in there. So gross margins tell you what every additional sale, once you've covered the fixed costs, what every additional sale is driving profit-wise to the bottom line, to the net profit, which is the money that you can take home at the end of the year. And really, for a kitchen business, you want to be aiming for sort of 35% plus. Manufacturing businesses will have slightly lower gross margins. Retailing business will have higher gross margins. And you need to really understand every single project. So on a project by project basis, what are the gross margins of every single project that I am selling? Because if you don't keep an eye on that closely, you can get into a situation like one of our clients who was operating out of Ireland. He told me that he was the best salesperson in the world. He converted people at 75%. I said, okay. But he was like, Josh, I'm spinning my wheels. I'm not getting anywhere. I'm not making any money. I don't understand. So, rather than look at his accounts at the end of the year, which isn't going to tell me much. I said, all right, can you pull out the last 10 projects that you've worked on? And I want you to show me on a line-by-line basis, so cabinet work, for example, what the selling price was, what your cost price was, and the difference between those is going to be your gross margin. And he said, yeah, it will take me a bit of time to pull all of that together. So he did eventually put it. About a week later, he got me these 10 projects, and I was looking through them, and his gross margin was like 20%. In some cases, he was actually losing money on every job because of innocent discounts, 5% here, 10% here, and they sound innocent enough, but what people don't understand is a 10% discount on a kitchen can actually make a 25% discount or reduction in your gross margin, and that actually plays a massive factor, especially when you're growing, to the bottom line and to the money in your pocket. So really, you've got to understand your gross margins. You do have to understand finances. You do have to understand the economics of the kitchen, bedroom and bathroom industry, and you can't just put your head in the sand. So yes, you can hire a bookkeeper or someone that works in the business, an accountant, a financial controller, whatever it is, to be able to do this stuff for you and present you with the figures, but you need to understand it and you need to get your head around it, because you ultimately, as the business owner, are the one that needs to make the decisions around pricing and around where you are going to draw the line with things like discounts. And the fourth and last reason that I see people not getting beyond this £1.5 million a year mark, and this is going to sound pretty weird, but it's that people don't plan for it. And I speak to a lot of business owners, especially when they first come into the KBB Collective. And when I talk to them about their goals and their vision for the business, it's not something that they can really explain in a tangible way. So they might tell me that, one day in the future, in the distant future, they want to have, 2 showrooms and they want to be taking, X number of pounds out of the business, but they don't have any idea how to get there. And what we teach is a way of reverse engineering and backing into a weekly plan for something that can be as far away as a 10-year target. And what's crazy to me is the difference I've seen in the businesses that we work with just by making these goals and reviewing them every single week and making sure that everyone that is responsible in your business also knows what these goals are and that everyone is rowing in the same direction. It's crazy to see how much more likely they are to reach their goals when it's written down on a piece of paper and they are looking at it every single day. Because if I said to you, next year I want you to have a good year, that is the most, subjective, vague explanation. What do you define as good? What's that going to mean? But if I said to you, listen, next year we're going to be doing £1.35 million a year, that is made up of 35 kitchen sales at an average order value of £27,500, whatever, I haven't worked out those numbers, and to get to that revenue figure we need to actually generate 14 qualified leads every single month, and it means that we need to have these gross margins on every single project. When you look at it in that granular detail and you review it on a weekly basis, you are just far likelier to get to where you want to be, because what doesn't get measured doesn't get managed. Like, you're not going to actually pay attention to the things that you're not looking at regularly, and so it may sound obvious, but that is a huge one that I see people making the mistake of all the time. So listen, those are the 4 main reasons that I see kitchen businesses not being able to scale past that £1.5 million a year mark. In the KBB Collective, my online education business for the kitchen industry, we teach retailers how to put systems into place to overcome a lot of these things, and we cover everything from sales, finance, marketing, people, operations and systems to scale beyond that £1.5 million a year. And the results from our initial cohorts have been absolutely fantastic. So if you're interested in that, check it out, click the link below and book a call with us, and we can see if maybe it's something that we can help with.